Do you hear that? If you listen closely, you can hear the voices of a mouse and a frog planning their next big adventure. But first, they need to be born from clay. Hello friends! Today I'm making two very special little friends. They've been living in some of my ideas and inside of my brain for a while now, and today I'm trying to make them come to life. Since I was little, I always loved stories about tiny people and tiny creatures that are living inside the forest, and I was always amazed by miniatures and the world seeming so big to these tiny creatures. And now I finally found a way to create that for myself, and it's making me feel very fulfilled. I hope you will enjoy watching me craft something that really comes from deep within my heart, that I enjoy so much. I'm starting with Ribbity. Ribbity Frog is a very friendly little frog. He lives inside of his hill house in the forest that you might have seen on my last video where I made it. He loves to go explore the forest and collect things the most. He lives next to his friend Gob, the ladybug. First I'm starting with some sketches of him to plan him out a little better. But as you can see, I already made figurines of him as little keychains, which inspired me to take this to the next level, which is his own movable doll. I'm doing this because I want to bring him more to life. I want to keep showing you guys his adventures and his friends. And the best option I found for that was to make a doll of him that I can pose, so I can show him doing different things. I can take beautiful pictures with him on his adventures. I started out by making the armature with some wire that I had laying around. That wasn't the easiest at first because I completely didn't plan this out, and I just started with different pieces of the silver wire. I should have just done like 2 pieces and that would have been enough, but I ended up putting at least 4 different pieces together. I might have learned from that and done it a bit differently on the next friendly little friend. I'm using polymer clay again to make these figurines. The clay isn't as sculptable as you would know from normal clay, which you can sculpt with water and make it soft. So I used some rubbing alcohol to blend out the creases, which works pretty well because you can't use water on polymer clay, because I layered the clay in a bit of a messy way. When I mixed up the color for his skin, I was so happy with the outcome that I made with these pastel chalks, because I think Ribbity would absolutely love this. I put it on with some cotton swabs instead of a brush because that's easier, you know? The most important thing to sculpt for Ribbity is probably his eyes, because he needs to see all the wondrous and shiny and collectible things that he can find in the forest. One time he found a mushroom that was so tiny that it fit in his palms and he wanted to keep it. So he put it on a jar and put it on a shelf and observed it there and preserved it there. But he didn't really know how to properly preserve things at the time. So it kind of turned bad, but he actually didn't see it, and Captain Tibbs had to come and he was the one to point it out. But since then, Ribbity has learned a lot of great ways to preserve things. He's made a lot of discoveries and he's found even nicer mushrooms, which is good because he had missed that mushroom for quite a while before he found another one that was as cute and as tiny and as pretty as that one. But I promise you wouldn't have wanted to see that rotten mushroom in his house. It wasn't the nicest thing. I mean, it is quite, I guess you could also say magical to see a mushroom with mushrooms, because, you know, rot is kind of made of mushrooms. Back to my process, I think maybe you can see that I'm learning and going as I go. And I actually took a while to figure out how to make a poseable figurine that is purely made of clay and some wire. I didn't want to turn him into a puppet that was made from foam or fabrics that would hide body parts of him. Like, if he's made from foam, then I would have to put clothes on him all the time. I wanted him to be able to walk around in his skin and nothing else, because he's just a little froggy. Of course, he gets some iconic orange frog pants later on. Maybe you can see there that some of my inspiration comes from children's books. Specifically, I am very inspired by the illustrations from Fritz Baumgarten, who's a children's book illustrator. He also has characters in his books that are wearing just shorts, maybe even little orange shorts, which I found was so fitting for a little frog, and I wanted one for my own that I can imagine worlds with. Well, I figured out my solution to my problem by just leaving spaces in between the limbs of the frog and of the mouse to be able to bend the wire in those places, because as soon as the clay figurine is baked in the oven, I wouldn't be able to move the clay anymore, so I need to leave those spaces. It turned out pretty well, if you can see at the end. It is very movable, you just have to mind that there's little gaps that you can see, but I don't think that plays a big role for the storytelling. I think people who see my pictures and videos can clearly see what I'm bringing across, and the focus doesn't lay on how perfect he is, how realistic he is, because he's just a silly little figurine. And I was very happy at the end to see that I was able to move him just as I imagined and pose him, and it worked out really well. For this next little friend, I also made a figurine before, which inspired me to turn him into a real character. This figurine was actually inspired by the flower that he's wearing on his head, the little hyacinth. I just wanted to make a cute character that is wearing this type of hat because I thought it was a perfect hat and it would look especially cute on a little mouse. I've never sculpted a mouse before this, but because I loved how he turned out, I decided that I also want to turn him into a character, and he just kind of slid into the story. And now I like to imagine that he is Ribbity's best friend, and they have been friends since their childhood, since they ever met each other. While making his doll, I am doing the Armature a bit different now, since I have learned from it. I'm connecting only 2 pieces of wire this time and connecting them with a thinner piece of wire to hold it together so it doesn't move around that much. Captain Tibbs is much louder and more adventurous than Ribbity is. While Ribbity is quiet and collecting things and reading books and enjoying a warm cup of tea, Tibbs is not so settled down. I haven't thought of a house for him yet, and that makes me think that maybe he doesn't even have a place to stay. He is the captain of his aircraft, and he's always out and about going on adventures. I plan to make his aircraft on a video maybe sometime, and illustrate or craft some of their childhood scenes together of how they imagined that Captain Tibbs would become this really cool pilot and go on adventures, and Ribbity just kind of played along with it. Maybe Tibbs even sleeps in his aircraft. Maybe we don't really know where he goes. He just is always out adventuring, and when he's not, then he visits his best friend and they hang out together or go on adventures together. Captain Tibbs drags Ribbity along to show him new places, and Ribbity never argues against it because he likes to see the things that he could collect along his path. After I sanded down Captain Tibbs' body a bit, I actually decided to take off his head. Don't look, it looks a bit scary. And redo it completely because I didn't like how it looks. He kind of looks a little bald if you can see it. I bet you can see it. So I just redid his face. I did his eyes a bit different, which turned out pretty cute. I put his ears higher, and then I added some details with a pen. This time the mouse is not getting a hyacinth hat, but a little pair of goggles, as he does have to have as a pilot. So here's the final reveal and a little peek into their adventures. If you like these two characters or my craft in general, then be sure to follow along for more and subscribe. I plan to make a lot more similar things and maybe even write stories about these two boys and their other friends and all of their adventures. There's gonna be a lot more exciting things to come. You can also see a bunch of more stuff about them on my Instagram page, so follow along there as well. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your support on my last video. I love you, bye!